This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 113. Models and Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and wargaming experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 videos a week. Ow, could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, Games Workshop came out with a little smidge of controversy. 30K continues to be the most expensive miniature war game on planet Earth, and learning new rules is hard. But first, do you need a website? Do you need to carve out your own corner of the internet to show yourself and your unique brand off to the world, but the only thing holding you back is no website design experience? Well, have no fear, Squarespace is here. With Squarespace, you don't have to start from scratch. Squarespace offers dozens of award-winning templates to choose from. Find one that suits your style and brand and start from there. And use Squarespace's suite of design tools to craft your website exactly how you want it. Whether you need to host that image that encapsulates your unique brand, it can be hosted on your very own Squarespace website, perfectly rendered using their automatic image scaling. And if you want to create an online shop to hold your merchandise and display it proudly to the world and your customers, Squarespace's store pages are easy to set up. Squarespace is the one-stop shop for all your website building and hosting needs, so head on over to Squarespace for a free trial. When you're ready to rock, use our code EOB10 to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Now, Games Workshop has been doing a really bad job of having available stock for people to buy. Pretty much everything has been selling out instantaneously, and tons of stuff are just out of stock in general. Hopefully, all of this is just them ramping up for producing as many 10th edition boxes as they possibly can, and then things will probably stabilize, because it's really annoying to not be able to get the thing you want. However, they are doing a Space Marine made to order, and the most interesting thing is that they are bringing back a previously event exclusive only miniature. First amongst these is the Primaris Company Champion, previously an event exclusive model. This hero of the chapter was proved exceptionally popular. Who can resist that stance? It's the most normal Space Marine I've ever seen in my life. In future, look out for other event miniatures returning to sale via made to order for a limited time after their event window closes. So typically at all of these events, they have exclusive miniatures. Usually they're not the most amazing thing ever. At Adepticon, I had no interest in getting the event exclusive miniatures. They're cool, I like that they exist. They're like a fun novelty. And for some reason at Adepticon, there was a line around the vendor hall for people buying these event exclusive miniatures. I am a collector, but I don't have like an exclusivity brain. It doesn't do anything for me if I'm one of a very select number of people who has this one very unique object, and that is part of the fun for me. I really like objects that have a fun story behind it. I think that's another reason why I really like miniature painting so much, because not only is it a cool toy, but I painted it. I made it exactly like how I wanted it to be. Where just by virtue of being an exclusive figure, that doesn't help tell an interesting story. It doesn't give the object a really interesting provenance. So I'm fine with them bringing these things back as made to order. Actually, I think it's really good. And it is a way to fight against scalpers, because a lot of people will buy these event exclusive miniatures and then sell them super marked up on eBay. It's to people who don't necessarily live near that event or couldn't get to the event, or maybe they were at the event, but the item sold out before they got a chance to purchase it. They end up having to pay, if they need to have that thing, they end up paying a really inflated price to get it. So if Games Workshop is going to continue to make event exclusive miniatures eventually available to buy, all of a sudden those items can't really charge such a premium on eBay because they're not an exclusive product. I think that that's really only a win, because not everybody gets to go to these events, and not everybody has a Warhammer store nearby to like pick up a birthday model. Although the birthday models might not become available, it says look out for event miniatures, and event could mean event like birthdays or Warhammer anniversaries or stuff, but it might also just be like legalese for specifically event exclusive miniatures becoming made to order, which is too bad, because I think some of the birthday models are actually a little bit more interesting and cool than some of the event exclusive miniatures. But I see this as just a win. I think it's a good thing. Number one, sometimes I just want to buy the cool thing. I don't want to go through this whole rigmarole of being at the right place at the right time in order to buy this thing. So I think that this is a really good move on Games Workshop's part. Exclusivity with miniatures and exclusivity with Games Workshop is a little bit odd, because the things just cost the normal price. It's not like the event exclusive miniatures are $100 for the first 100 people who make it in the door. Come now, make sure that you have your wallets ready. It's just a normal miniature that you can't typically buy, although now you might be able to typically buy it. So I think this is a very good thing. I sort of understand the argument. It devalues the exclusivity of these pieces, but I don't know, it's a toy. It's not that big a deal. You know, it's not the exclusive rose gold iPhone. Like, it's just a Space Marine who is in a very Space Marine-y pose. I think that this is only a good thing. And along with the event exclusive miniature being made available to order again as a made to order, they've also brought back pretty much all of the other Space Marine heroes that have been discontinued over the years. Some of the really cool stuff like Pedro Cantor and Gabriel Seth. Those models are super, super sick. And it was kind of sad to see them go because it kind of meant that the Flesh Terrors and Imperial Fists, or not the Crimson Fists, were just kind of gone from the Space Marine range. Some of those successor chapters that, you know, they're not big enough. They're not like first founding chapters that are obviously going to get like their own combat patrols and exclusive miniatures. But it was nice for those people who want something a little bit off the beaten track. So I really like seeing that those miniatures made available. I really feel like I missed out because a couple of weeks ago they showed off some of the Dark Eldar stuff made to order. I really wish I picked up some of those miniatures because who knows when they're going to be coming back. That's really the only issue I have with the made to order is you don't know. I wish that there was at least some sort of like an outline, a calendar of Space Marines are going to be this month, Xenos are going to be this month, X is going to be this, Y is going to be that. Because it would be great to be able to like save up my money. It's like, oh, all of the Necron stuff is going to be December. So I'm just going to make sure that I have a little bit of money set aside so I can get some of those Necron units that I want in my army. But instead, it's just completely nebulous. You know, one day perhaps that miniature that you want will be made available, or maybe it'll just be permanently discontinued forever and you're never going to get a chance to get it. And then maybe you look at other ways of getting miniatures like eBay, or definitely not recasting. I would never suggest that ever. But yeah, these guys were really, really neat. Some of them are definitely showing their age. I don't know how many people are going to be picking up the White Scars Khan on bike. That mini is ancient. The old Space Marine bikes in general are really, really old. And boy, does that miniature really, really show its age. The rest of these are all pretty decent. I'm surprised the Ultramarine Sergeant Kronos is making a reappearance. I never thought that guy looked very good. It was kind of interesting because he used to be sold as like a 2 model kit, one of him just from the waist up sticking out of a rhino and then him on foot. Because you used to be able to disembark certain heroes. I don't know if that's true anymore. I haven't really taken a lot of vehicles in my army since like Warhammer 40k 6th edition, but it is fun to see these models back. It kind of reminds me of high school when I used to constantly scroll through the Games Workshop web store and these were the miniatures I was looking at. These old rough looking sculpts. They have a charm, and a lot of these are really, really classic sculpts. A lot of these sculpts are Juan Diaz sculpts, and he was one of the most talented people to ever work at Games Workshop, so it is good to see them make a reappearance. But yeah, made to order is interesting. I'm almost surprised Games Workshop doesn't do more with it. I wish that they would just drop Forgeworld and do something else, like maybe Forgeworld becomes the made to order place. I mean, they already do nothing but resin casting, so maybe just have Forgeworld deal with all of the really, really old stuff. And it'll be interesting to see, I guess this is also giving us a little bit of a roadmap for 10th edition, because the big up in the air question of 10th edition is what units are going to stay and get rules and what units are going to be completely gone. Because in the switch from 7th to 8th edition, we saw a lot of miniatures a lot of units that didn't have miniatures to go along with them got completely axed from Warhammer 40k. And all of these units are being made available to purchase right before 10th edition. It would be really, really crummy of Games Workshop to make it that way, because these won't even show up until after 10th edition has launched, because typically they have like 180 working days to get a made to order as the maximum length of time it takes to receive a made to order item. So it would be wild if somebody got Darnath Slysander, and then all of a sudden, by the time you actually receive your miniature, his rules no longer exist, and then I guess you just have to run him as like a standard Captain and Terminator armor. It would be pretty darn lame. So what I would expect is we are going to see individual rules for all of these old units, which I think is nice. I like when people get really, really nitty and gritty with their list building and they kind of like, I am the Crimson Fist guy and I've got Pedro Cantor and I've got all of their hands painted red and every single shoulder pad is the perfect marking vehicles are 11th company, scouts are 10th company, veterans are first company, and you just have it all exactly correct. I really, really like armies like that because you can just really see the effort and the excitement just right there on display on those miniatures. I also like weird stuff when people just put Hello Kitty all over their Necrons. Both of those things just bring me so much joy. One thing that does not spark joy though is the price of some of these Forgeworld tanks. I was doing some research for a video recently and I was looking for some of these old Games Workshop tanks and they were all missing from the Forgeworld web store, so I just assumed that they were discontinued because Forgeworld never gives any information about what's going on ever. But it seems like they were all being removed for a retooling because now they're coming back in stock with plastic components, with some plastic components. It seems like the main chassis of all of these vehicles are still gonna be resin, which is terrible. Large vehicles are so inappropriate for resin, it's just a huge pain in the butt. So, and it dramatically inflates the price of these kits because what's really nice about 30K now is that since some of the kits have been retooled for plastic, they've all been made way better. Plastic is just such a better material than resin. They often come with way, way more options than purchasing them all separately, and they're cheaper. It's fantastic. The Leviathan Dreadnought, the Contemptor Dreadnoughts, it's great to be able to get these things in plastic. However, not all of them are making the transition. Not all of these 30K kits are passing the Rubicon Primaris, you could say. The Mastodon Super Heavy Assault Transport is $610. No, that's way too much money. Number one, I've never been a fan of this tank. I think it looks like a bunny rabbit, but man, $610 for a tank. It's not that big. Like, it's not Thunderhawk big. It's just a weird little tank. I mean, it's not little, it's a really, really big tank that is gonna weigh as much as a child because of all of that resin. $610 is way too much money. If this is a game that people are actually meant to play, and 30K is the most expensive war game you can buy. It's more expensive than Warhammer 40K if you actually build like a full-sized army, because typically a 2,000 point army for Warhammer 40K is less money than a 3,000 or 4,000 point army for 30K, which you do play 30K in those larger points battles. And those larger points battles gives you more room to bring some of these big, obnoxious vehicles. And it does add another element of making the game a little bit more interesting because it's typically Space Marines versus Space Marines. So bringing these kind of apocalyptic units does make the game a little bit more interesting, but not for $610. Or the Equitar Bombard with Graviton Charge Cannon or any of the other weapon options it comes with, $175 for a model smaller than a Rhino. Even the humble Landspeeder Storm, or the Javelin Landspeeder, different Landspeeder, $118 for one. White Scars players are gonna want probably 3 of these things. $175. Forgeworld is ridiculous. The Javelin Landspeeder, if they made it a plastic kit, it'd be like $60, maybe $65, and that would be too much money. But $118. I like the look of 30K. I would kind of be really interested in starting a Wordbearer's army because I just like the kind of the maroon color scheme with the runes. I think it'd be a really fun painting challenge. And I could play some more Space Marines. The rules for 30K look really interesting and engaging. Hopefully they'll bring a lot of that to 40K once we get 10th edition. But man, oh man, just having the range split between Games Workshop, which is expensive, but good quality plastic stuff, and Forgeworld, which is not very good quality resin for incredibly inflated prices. Like 30K has always been kind of the place where people go when they're done with 40K, but they're not willing to give up Warhammer 40,000. It's the game that you just switch to, but it's just so much more expensive, and I feel like it should be cheaper. Like Warhammer 40K should be the most expensive war game, and then everything else under the sun should be underneath that. And for the most part, it is, except for 30K. I don't get it. Because they've retooled all of these kits, I'm sure that they're not planning on doing plastic versions of any of these. So I would say most people will probably just plan on never taking any of these units, ever, because they're just so wildly expensive. I don't get the idea behind 30K, and with Old World coming out, which is also going to be split between Games Workshop and Forgeworld, is Old World going to be also an incredibly, incredibly expensive war game? I just don't understand. Forgeworld has always been kind of bizarre to me. It made sense like 10 years ago, maybe even longer than that, 15 years ago, when resin was better than plastic. It's like, okay, you're paying a premium for better quality miniatures, but now plastic is perfect. So there's no actual value that Forgeworld is adding. It's just a weird paywall between some aspects of this game that you want to play. It's very bizarre. No other company does it that way. No other miniature war game does it that way. The only other paywall for games would maybe be STLs versus physical models. But then, some people don't have printers. You can't print STLs, so you have to go with the physical models. Games Workshop could make all this stuff in plastic and it would be glorious and perfect, but they don't. They leave some of it up to Forgeworld. I don't understand. I would love to be the CEO of Games Workshop and just see all the behind the scenes and just get a full picture of what it looks like. Maybe Forgeworld just brings in enough money to survive, but not enough money to be retooled into a real proper Games Workshop company with plastic kits. I don't know. Forgeworld is annoying. These tanks are cool, but I'm never ever gonna look at them ever again because the prices are absolutely obnoxious. And speaking of things that are obnoxious, this week I learned a new game, Shatterpoint, which is the new Star Wars game, and it's really, really fun. But the one thing about miniature wargaming is learning the rules is always hard. I've learned so many war games over the years, and I play so many of them. I feel like I should be able to just slide into these new games, absolutely no problem. But it always takes like a day of rereading the rules. The first game is an absolute slog of looking things up. It is wild. Like I get impatient and frustrated when I'm playing video games, and I'm like, I don't know exactly how this menu works instantly. And then these war games, you almost have to learn a new language. Like Shatterpoint has a struggle phase, and it actually doesn't have turns. You just continue to draw from your decks and then refresh them when you're out of activations. It just took so long to learn. Overall though, it's decent. It's a very, very interesting game. It reminds me a lot more of board games than tabletop war games. One thing that is interesting, because now that I'm playing so many different games, I'm starting to learn some of these different mechanics, and different games approach miniatures differently, because Games Workshop made their games in such a way that the miniatures are very, very important to the actual rules themselves. Games Workshop is kind of focused on WYSIWYG, where you can put together your models based on the rules of the actual game, and just the physical makeup of your miniature has an impact on gameplay. Where a lot of other games really just treat the miniature as a token that works within the game system, but the actual miniature itself doesn't have a lot of intrinsic value when it comes to the actual gameplay. You could have the exact same experience if you were pushing like quarters and nickels around the table. It's really interesting. I don't know which one is better. I think from a role-playing aspect or kind of like a getting into it aspect, I think I like rules to be tied into the physical miniatures. Although I think that the games that don't have it that way probably have much tighter and cleaner rule sets. It's really, really interesting. Like a game like Armada, or it's definitely X-Wing and the Atomic Mass Games Armada, the Star Wars version of Armada, the miniature is actually getting in your way all the time with the sails and the wings. Often you'll have to pull the miniature off the base because the base is the actual thing you're using for gameplay. And I love those games. They're really, really tight and fun to play, and it's kind of fairly balanced and intuitive, but they don't kind of leave me with the same kind of modeling challenges that maybe like a Games Workshop or a Mantic game might have, like a Kings of War or Dead Zone, where you're building that miniature in a specific way for it to operate in the game. It's really interesting. Miniature wargaming is a absolutely bizarre thing, because video games are better. Video games, they do all the math for you. You just sit down, you put on the headphones, and all of a sudden you're just transported to a whole new world. It does everything for you. Like, video games are unbelievably fun. But there is something special about miniature war games because they're not as instantly rewarding. Getting everything painted up beforehand, it just adds that little extra spice. It tickles your brain. It actually feels like an accomplishment. Like, I have so many really cool Minecraft buildings that are just saved on I guess they're not saved anymore because I think the computer I did that on is dead. But Like, all of those things were really, really fun in the moment, but now they're gone forever. Where all of my war games, they were fun in the moment to build them, to put together, and to play with them. And all of those memories kind of live on a little bit stronger because I still have all of those miniatures. And so when I look at them, they kind of become these little tomes of knowledge where I think about that guy who did the really, really cool thing that one day after school, or that one miniature who missed all of his shots shooting at one of my friend's chaos units. There's something really special about miniature wargaming. And if you want the absolute coolest terrain you can possibly get for miniature wargaming, then our Patreon is the place to be. Over there, we have a new STL terrain pack every single month. This month, we have the Orc Brewery, the unofficial sequel to Octerus, complete with new Orky wall sections and a goth rocker stage. We also make one extra episode of Eons of Battle every single week where we take a look at our viewers' miniatures and give them some ideas and critiques of how to improve their painting. We host live Discord hangouts, and we have a tier where you can get your name on one of my Black Templar Space Marines, and you can join the Immortal Crusade. This week was a really, really paint-heavy week, getting Shatterpoint all ready to rock and roll, and with that done, that means that I only have like 7 more war games to paint. Thanks for watching.